is Eponine, aka Epi, aka the queen of changing filming locations. I think I've used like a million different filming locations since I started this channel. Currently I am on the floor of my kitchen because everybody in my house is asleep. It's like 11 o'clock at night, but I'm trying to get this refilmed because I just was not happy with how it turned out the first time. I felt like I was just trying to rush it, and when it comes to topics like this, I want to make sure that I do the victims justice and make something that I'm proud of. So I'm redoing everything, and it's a little late, but we're gonna get it done. So for today's story, we are kind of going to talk about another story of two people with the same name, like the Mary Morris case, which if you haven't seen, I will put a card somewhere up here. But it's kind of similar to that, but not at all similar to that. And I know that sounds weird, but you'll know what I mean when I get into it. So now that I've confused you, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the really bizarre disappearance of Nicholas Barclay. So on June 13th of 1994, Nicky Barclay was playing basketball in a park with his friends, and when it started to get a little bit late, he called his family on a payphone and asked if they could give him a ride home. Now, Nicky's uncle, Jason, was the one who answered the phone, and he told him that his mom was sleeping and that he wasn't going to wake his mom up just to give him a ride home, and he could just walk home. So at that point, Nicholas hung up the phone and started walking home, but he never made it home. Now, at first, the authorities weren't super worried because they figured that he had just ran away. And I know I said in a previous video that it's kind of annoying when they do this. However, in this situation, it really wasn't uncalled for. Nicholas had had a lot of behavioral issues. He'd gotten tattooed even though he was really young. He had like 4 or 5 tattoos. He had just gotten a lot of fights with his mom. He skipped school all the time, and when he did go to school, he didn't behave and he got in trouble there. And Nicholas just had a lot of issues with everybody in his life who had any sort of authoritative figure. And it got to the point where it was so bad that Nicholas's mom actually called her brother Jason in for help and was like, I need you to come live with me because I just can't handle this kid by myself. So he was kind of a handful, and the day after he went missing, he actually had a court hearing to see if he was going to go live in basically a juvenile delinquent house, and he was going to get put in court custody, and he wasn't going to be able to live with his family. And obviously Nicholas was not excited about this idea. And because of this, the authorities figured maybe he just ran away because he's not trying to go to this hearing. However, they all quickly realized that this probably wasn't just a runaway case, because normally when Nicholas would run away, he would come back within a day or two. And in this situation, he wasn't coming back. All of a sudden, one day turned into 2, 2 days turned into 3, and by 3 days, the family realized there's something wrong here. At this point, the family got a hold of authorities, and the police started an active investigation, and they started to look for Nicholas. And they figured he probably was local because the family looked through his room, and all of his clothes were there, all of his belongings were there, and they figured if he was going to run away from home, he probably would have taken his stuff. And not only that, but he only had $5 with him, so it's not like he could have gotten a hotel, it's not like he could have gotten a train ticket somewhere. He could have maybe taken the bus, but still not super far. So the authorities just weren't really sure where to start because there just weren't any clues. He was just missing. Now, 3 months later, on September 25th of 1994, Jason, Nicholas's uncle, called the police and said, hey, I think I saw Nicholas trying to break into the garage. and as soon as I went out there and started to say something, he ran away, and I don't know where he is. So the police went out to investigate, but they didn't see any trace of him. They don't know why he would have came and then ran away. Nobody else reported seeing him in the area, and they weren't sure what the whole situation was. And so even though they were hopeful that that would provide some clues, it didn't lead to anything either. And actually later, the police concluded that they don't believe Jason even saw Nicholas that day, and neither does Nicholas's mom. So that alone is really, really sketchy. So the mystery of what happened to Nicholas just kind of lingered at that point. Everybody was just left wondering what could have happened to this little boy. Did he run away? Did he get kidnapped? Did he get murdered? Where is he? And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, the authorities got a phone call from a man in France. And this man said that he had Nicholas, and that he'd found Nicholas just kind of cowering somewhere, and that Nicholas told him that he had been kidnapped, and then he had been brought over to Europe on a plane where he'd been put into a child sex trafficking ring. And at some point he managed to escape this child sex trafficking ring, and then they found him, and then they were able to get a hold of the family. Now, obviously at this point the family was ecstatic. Who wouldn't be? Their son has been missing for 3 years. They have no idea what happened to him. And now the authorities are calling them saying, we know where your son is. Now, they couldn't afford to all fly to Spain to go pick up Nicholas, but his sister was able to get a flight through her work. So she ended up flying to Spain, and when she got there, she saw her brother, and she was so excited, and she hugged him, and she was just ecstatic. He had been missing for a long time. Nobody knew what happened. Everybody was afraid that he was dead, and all of a sudden there he was standing in front of them. So his sister said, yeah, that's my brother. She identified him, and they flew back to the United States together to be reunited with the family. So everything at that point seemed great. They'd found this missing boy, case closed. They were going to figure out what happened. Maybe they could even bust some sort of sex trafficking ring. Everything was great, better than they could have hoped for. And then when Nicholas got home, all of a sudden things started to get weird. At first, when he got home, their family was just excited to have him back. He'd been missing, and now he was home. So they seemed to ignore a lot of the really obvious signs that this didn't really seem like Nicholas. And let me explain why. Now, Nicholas, before he had gone missing, had blonde hair and blue eyes. And Nicholas, when he came back from this, had brown hair and brown eyes all of a sudden. And when the family asked him about this, he told them, yeah, the people who kidnapped me just chemically altered my eye color and my hair color. And the family, maybe out of desperation, maybe out of ignorance, were just like, oh, okay, seems legit, and they just kind of went with it. And then they started noticing that the way he was talking was not like their son. Nicholas, before he went missing, was just really kind of aggressive. He was really violent and short when he talked to people. He was not mild-tempered in any way, and he was from Texas, so he did not have a European accent. And Nicholas, when he came back, was just very quiet. He was very shy-spoken. He was not aggressive at all, and he had an accent. And when they asked him about this, he just replied that, yeah, obviously I'm going to act a little bit different and talk a little bit different. I just went through something traumatic. And he said that his captors just did not allow him to speak English, and that's why he had this weird accent now. Now, the family also noticed that Nicholas just kind of seemed really mature for his age. Obviously, he was getting into trouble, he was causing fights, he was, in every essence of the word, a juvenile delinquent before he went missing. And when he came back, he just seemed really mature for somebody who was only missing for 3 years. And now, as much as the family wanted to believe that their son was really home and that this was really Nicholas, they were starting to believe that it wasn't, and so were other people. And there was an investigator who actually decided to compare pictures of Nicholas's ears before he went missing with pictures of Nicholas's ears after he went missing. Because your ears are something that are not going to change shape as they grow. If you have a certain shape, that's how they're going to stay. And when he compared the pictures of the ears, he noticed they're not the same ear. This is not the same person. So at that point, they asked him for blood samples and for fingerprints so that they could positively identify him as Nicholas Barclay. However, he denied to do this and said that he didn't want to take the DNA tests and he didn't want to give him fingerprints. So in February of 1998, the court got a court order to get DNA and fingerprints from Nicholas Barclay, and it was determined that it was not him. This was somebody who was pretending to be a missing boy who flew all the way back from Europe with Nicholas's sister and reunited with the family and was pretending to be him the whole time. And at first, he said, yeah, I knew Nicholas when I was there. He's fine, but he is in a sex trafficking ring, but he's alive. And then his story was, yes, I knew Nicholas when I was there, but he's dead. And then his story was, no, I didn't know Nicholas at all. I just made everything up. And it turns out that he just found Nicholas on a website for missing children, decided, I'm going to act like I'm him, and just decided to run with it, and it worked. Now, who was this man? He was a 23-year-old man named Frederick Pierre Bourdin, I believe is how it's pronounced. I'm sorry, it's a French name, so I'm not totally sure. And he was somebody who had been known for posing as other people. This was not his first rodeo. This was not the first time he's done this. And he's actually made such a habit out of this that Interpol referred to him as the chameleon. So he was very well accustomed to stealing people's identities and taking on the identities of other people. Now, his reasoning for doing all of this was that he grew up in a home without a whole lot of love and without a whole lot of support. So he would take on the identity of missing people and other vulnerable people so that he would be able to receive love and affection, which shows that, to me, he was not totally right in the head. Now, due to the pain and emotional heartache that he caused to Nicholas's family, and due to the fact that he was, committing fraud and perjury, and due to the fact that he had acted like over 500 different people, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, which is actually 3 times what the suggested sentence is. But the judge was really hard on him because he said that he was out of control, and he wanted to show him that this was absolutely not okay. Now, when he was released, he went on to return to France in 2003, and he took on the identity of another person. This time he acted like a 14-year-old French boy named Leo Bailey. And when he had to do a DNA test for that identity, it also proved that he was not Leo Bailey, obviously. Then, in August 2004, Bourdin passed himself off as a 14-year-old boy named Ruben Sanchez Espinoza. And he said that his mother was murdered during the Madrid bomb attacks, which was just a completely false identity in this case. He just made the whole entire person up from scratch. And when the Spanish police found out that he was faking this identity, they deported him back to France, where he got in trouble again. And then in June of 2005, Bourdin passed as a 15-year-old Spanish orphan named Francisco Hernandez Fernandez. And he spent a month in France, and he stayed for a month in France under this identity, where he claimed that his parents had been killed in a horrific car accident. On June 12th of that year, somebody recognized him from a TV show where they were talking about this man who takes on the identity of other people, and they reported him and turned him in. And then on September 16th, 2005, Bourdin was sentenced to 4 months in prison. After Bourdin's identity was confirmed to not be Nicholas Barclay, the investigators felt like they were essentially back at square one. They now had no idea where he was, and they'd been wasting their time and effort for months on this guy who was faking it, who wasn't even the right person. So at this point, they started wondering if maybe the family was behind it, and maybe the family did something to him. And that's why they were so willing to just accept anybody who pretended to be the son. And they knew that it wasn't him, but at that point, it was covering up a murder. So they're okay with it. They're just going to take it and run with it and not ask questions at that point, which is really out there. But some people think that there's some reasons to think that this could be true. Now, Nicholas's mother was a heroin addict, so people wonder if maybe she had accidentally hurt him, or she had done something to him when she was high, or for some reason that her drug use could have influenced something happening to Nicholas. Now, to show her innocence, Nicholas's mom actually took 2 polygraphs. And it's really interesting because the first one she passed and the second one she didn't. And by now I think we all know my opinion on polygraph tests, but it's just really interesting to point that out. Also, Nicholas's uncle Jason developed a really, really bad drug habit after Nicholas disappeared and actually ended up overdosing from cocaine. And people wonder if maybe he was involved in it. And then because he was trying to keep these secrets, that's what made him turn to drugs and ultimately led to him dying as well. Now, what all of this really means is that since that day on June 13th of 1994, Nicholas Barclay has never been seen or heard from. Nobody has any clues as to where he is, and he's just missing. And I think that's the hard part about this case, is even though this whole imposter thing is crazy, all it means is that the family had to go through losing their son, finding him, and then losing him again. And whether the mom and the uncle were behind it or not, Nicholas, I'm sure, had other people who cared about him. He had the sister who went and picked him up. And they had to go through losing him twice, essentially, which I can't imagine the heartbreak that they must have been feeling. And a lot of agencies think that he did just run away, which, again, if you've seen my videos, you kind of know my opinion on that as well. But there's a lot of agencies that think that he actually is an endangered missing person because of the fact that the family could have been involved in this, and there's enough signs to show that maybe there was some foul play here. Now, as a description, Nicky is described as a Caucasian male with blonde hair and blue eyes. He has pretty poorly done, like, stick and poke style tattoos of the letters J, T, L, and N on his left shoulder, his left hand, and his left ankle. And he also had a noticeable gap on his front teeth at that age, at least. Now, Nicky was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, which may or may not be affecting his behavior still as an adult. And the last time he was seen, he was wearing a white t-shirt, purple shorts, and he was carrying a pink backpack. Now, this case is just bizarre. It's out there just because of the whole imposter part. I don't know what kind of person you have to be to take advantage of a family like that and to put them through pain and suffering like that for no reason, but it's just crazy, and it throws this one for a loop, and it's just really out there. So that is it for that case. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found it interesting. And before we go, I did want to give you guys a quick update on a prior story that I've covered on this channel, and that is the Cody Haynes story. Now, as much as I wish this update was that he was found, or we have new revelations as to what happened, that's not the update. It's not good news like that. The update is that his father, Rick Haynes Sr., for those of you who haven't seen the video or don't remember, Cody Haynes was actually Rick Haynes Jr. He just went by Cody. But Rick Haynes Sr. actually has passed away, and I'm not sure how it happened or what happened exactly, but he has passed away and taken the secret of what happened to Cody to the grave with him. Now, he did have a girlfriend, so maybe she will speak out and say something now that he's dead. I don't think Marla would say anything even at this point, because I truly feel like she's involved as well. But I'm just really hoping that something is going to happen. I have spoken with his family, and they are still very hopeful, and they are never going to give up on Cody, and I am never going to give up the hope of finding Cody. So I just wanted to give you guys that update and let you know that that has happened, because I promised to keep you guys in the loop on stuff, and I think it's important to give you guys updates on cases that I've talked about on this channel. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun filming this series. It's been a lot of work doing 5 videos, 5 days in a row, with just as busy of a life as I have. But it's been a really fun challenge, and mostly I'm excited that you guys seem to be enjoying it. So yeah, that is it for today. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow for part 5, and we will touch base later. Bye.